last offseason, we were doing an episode. OG was here. And I said, OG, I think Jalen Brunson is one of those guys that can write and sing the songs himself.
Great take.
I think he can do it. Jaden McDaniels is not going to have the volume or opportunity to do it, but I think he's quietly going under the radar, and he's one of the best wings in the league for his value right now. You can argue he's a top 5 defender in the NBA, and offensively he's only getting better. I think he could be even better than the best 3-and-D player. I think he could be most improved player next year. Cat being healthy is definitely going to take away shots, but Anthony Edwards is the person I'm putting my faith in when it comes to the Timberwolves, and I think him saying this, one thing I've noticed about Anthony Edwards since I've been following him his rookie year is every single interview when he puts an expectation, when he puts a stamp on something that he expects the Timberwolves to do, they usually do it. Mm-hmm. Since he's been a rookie, they've been to the playoffs twice. He's performed in each of those playoff series. I just heard Bruce Brown say that the Timberwolves were the toughest matchup in the playoffs, of more than the Lakers, more so than the Suns, more so than the Heat. I think the Timberwolves, I was a year too early, but I'm still going to ride the same horse. And I'm saying the Timberwolves next year are going to be a great team. I think they're going to be a top 3 team in the Western Conference. And I think Anthony Edwards is going to be a top 10 MVP candidate. And all of these things that Edwards is listing out, I think is entirely possible for them to get next year.
You and this Minnesota stuff, man.
It's not going to stop.
When will it end?
When will it end, man?
Listen, I tell you.
Hold on, Drew.
Okay.
Now, wait a minute. Because Joe and I, we were on this last year. We can't leave out the fact that, Cat did miss 54 games.
He did.
And when he came back into the lineup, I believe we were a month away from the playoffs. They were 2 games. There were a game, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they were a game and a half out the 5 spot, which is where I had them projected before the season started. I had them as a top 5 seed in the West. And this was after Cat came back after missing 54 games. So we didn't really get an opportunity to see what him and Rudy look like together.
You know what's crazy, OG? 3/4 of this table had them as a top 5 seed to start the season. But only one guy had them as the number 1 seed in the West.
They were really number 2. Denver was number 1, but my love for
only
Minnesota.
one guy had them as
I had them 5.
We all had them 5. Couple things Ant said. Couple of it makes sense. Rudy Gobert could win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know, voter fatigue might not allow him to do it, but he always would be up there, have the numbers, have the impact. Jaden McDaniels for MIP, I like that. He's definitely a guy that can improve. Defensively, he's amazing. Offensively, he adds more wickets to his game. He can be good. The Cat one. The Cat one is
that's the only one that can't happen.
Yeah, that's probably like the one like Ant Edwards for sure. Minnesota for the Cat one is probably the only one that's probably not likely to happen, unfortunately. I just don't think Cat's going to be at that type. I think Ant's going to fully take over the team this year, fully be the number 1 option. Cat's going to play off him. And I think that's going to help Cat. I think that's just going to help Cat focus more on the defensive end, be a little bit. I mean, he's already efficient as fuck, but just really focus more on the defensive end, and it's going to make them a more sound team. I just think Ant-Man is just propping up his teammates, and I think that's something you got to do as a leader. You got to give your teammates the confidence and instill that confidence in them. If you can do that,
best leaders, man.
Yeah, he's for sure one of the best leaders.
For his age, he's brilliant.
He's one of them ones, and that's what you got to do for guys like that. And it's crazy because all those guys are pretty much older than him. Outside of I want to say Jaden, I think Jaden's the only one younger than him, but for the most part, all of those guys are older than him. Mike Conley, Cat, Gobert. They're all older than him, so for him to have that,
Nas, I think,
Nas is definitely
a little
older.
Facts.
Yeah. So Nas
is young, bro. He's 24. Facts.
Yeah. So for him to have that type of confidence in himself and to give it to his teammates, that's just the one thing you got to praise about this whole interview, and that's the one thing I got out of it. Like, he is fully ready to take over the Minnesota Timberwolves franchise, fully ready to lead them into the charge, and that's something you want in your superstar player.
Jaden's a year older. Anthony Edwards is 21.
Wow. Thought he was younger.
My takeaway from this interview is that it's just impossible not to root for him. Just the way that he carries himself at such a young age, he already has taken that responsibility as the captain, the unassigned captain of the locker room. The fact that he is as young as he is, and he has all these expectations for these guys, right? That's more so him being a great teammate and understanding the value of how great that his guys can be. Of course, it could sound asinine that he thinks that Karl Anthony Towns could be the MVP. But what he's acknowledging is that that's an all-NBA player. Sure, we could say that at this point in time, it's a little crazy to think Rudy Gobert could be the Defensive Player of the Year again. But it's understood that Rudy Gobert is one of the best defensive players in the league. J-Mac he has already solidified himself as one of the best perimeter defenders in this game.
He locks up LeBron all the time.
He can shoot the ball extremely well. It's unfortunate that he was a little out of his mind and lost himself and broke his hand, that he wasn't available to actually lock up LeBron when it mattered most. It's really unfortunate.
It is.
But of course, we understand how the leader of all this is Anthony Edwards. He never mentioned his skill set, not once. He understands who he is. He says, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to have fun. That's just who I am. I trust that. But really, he's funny for this, too, because they talked about the draft process. They talked about that 2020 draft class and how there was, some dirt being thrown on their name saying that they weren't that talented. And he was talking about his workouts with teams, and he's saying how he worked out for the Golden State Warriors. And he said that Steve Kerr told him that he had to go harder, that he didn't seem like he was going that hard. And it's just like, wow, to think that Steve Kerr acknowledged that with him very early on, and Anthony Edwards has carried that with him throughout so far his entire NBA journey. And for the career that he's put forward so far, so shortly into this point in time, it's a testament to his work ethic, to his drive. And I do firmly believe that Anthony Edwards definitely can reach that top 5.
Could have been a warrior if he tried harder.
He's already a baby face of the NBA, and I feel like when you were talking about underrated, you were talking about J-Mac, I'm assuming, because there's no underrating Anthony Edwards. It's assumed, it's known he is one of the premier guys in this league.
J-Mac is underrated. I think the Timberwolves have to see what Cat looks like with this team for one season fully healthy. He has earned that right for how long he's been with this franchise. But I think even if they eventually trade Cat, Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels, them two alone, can carry that type of burden, and they can expand their games that much more to still be a team that you respect in the West.
Daniels just needs to improve with his on-ball scoring. Obviously, he's a great catch and shoot, great, solid three-point shooter. I'm blanking on his percentages right now, but I'm pretty sure didn't he shoot around, 37?
From where?
From the three-point line?
He shot 40%.
40%. That just speaks how great he is as a three-point shooter. It's just a matter of if we want him to get to what Joel believes that he can be, it's just going to be a matter of him improving while the ball is in his hands offensively. But with Mike Conley as the initiator of the offense, with, of course, the responsibility that Ant already has within the offense, it's not imperative that he has to do that right off rip. He really can. He's in a position where what Jaylen Brown has become, that's kind of, I look for him to become that poor man's offensive version, because defensively, he's already better than what Jaylen Brown's put some strong defensive season for us. J-Mac has already proven to be a better defender than what Jaylen Brown's shown us. I think that offensively, he can be a poor man's Jaylen Brown, but what he has the luxury of that Jaylen Brown and the Boston Celtics don't have is Mike Conley, like OG was talking about, someone that actually can connect the offense, and really it is better suited for Jaden McDaniels to get to his spots and get to easier buckets.
I love Ant-Man. So go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go
Ahead. You good?
Dehls.
I love Ant-Man. I know you try to force this rivalry between Ant-Man and Jason Tatum, but Ant-Man's
just asking simple questions.
He's really one of my favorite players.
You absolutely have done.
You have been.
Yes, you have.
And I respect it.
There's an agenda there. Yes, there is. 100%.
There is. Saying he could be better than Jason Tatum. I said, so you think he'd be the best player in the league? You said, yes, I respect it. And the reason why I love Ant-Man so much, and Drew mentioned it, is just his attitude towards not just basketball, but life, right? You have so many guys. I mean, everyone in the NBA is super talented, but I think the big difference maker is how you mentally approach the game. And I know every single year that we come into a season, and Edwards is going to put in that work that offseason. Whatever his deficiency was that previous season, he's going to put in the work to make sure he's the best version of himself. And we have a lot of guys in the NBA who are great, but not a lot of guys in the NBA have that same mentality. And when we talk about guys who have that killer instinct, guys out there that have that dog in them, Anthony Edwards is the first player that comes to mind. And now is the time that the Timberwolves have to step up, right? I think last year we all expect them to take that leap. Injuries caused them to fall short. But you don't go out and trade 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert to be a first-round exit. You don't trade 5 first-round picks to just be a playing team. This Timberwolves team, I get it, a couple of their pieces, Ant-Man and Jaden, are still young, but Ant-Man has the potential next season to be an all-NBA player. Jaden McDaniels has the potential to be an all-NBA player, all-defensive team player. Same thing with Cat for all-NBA. Same thing with Gobert for all-defensive. They have the pieces to put together a very formidable team. Ultimately, just how I think that, I didn't mention it, but for the Celtics to get over the hump, I think it's also on Jason Tatum to get a little bit better. I think it's on Ant to get better himself. He doesn't have to go out there and say expectations for himself. We all know what Ant's capable of. But I think if Ant Edwards is able to make that leap, he's able to make a second team, where he really gets in his bag. He's able to make a first team. I think that more than anything, more than health, more than Jaden McDaniels being better offensively, if Ant Edwards can take that leap next season and become that top 10 player, that's what's going to get the Timberwolves into that top 4 seed in the West.
Well, two things, Drew, and anybody that knows me knows I'm a Herb Jones stan. Anybody that knows me knows that how I feel about Herb Jones. I am one of the biggest Herb Jones stans that there is. I think that in the very near future, we're going to have a serious conversation about him being the defensive player of the year. He gives me Bruce Bowen vibes. I think he's a starter on the championship team at some point. But right behind him, I feel very similar about Jaden McDaniels. When I watch him defend on the perimeter, as a former player, I'm looking at him thinking to myself, I would need a lot of shots to score against him. He looks like he's very difficult to score against. With that being said, when I think about a great player, right? When I think about a great player becoming a great player, I think about the stuff that when your game is predicated on this, and this isn't going, what else do you do? So I watched Anthony Edwards last season in the playoffs, and he wasn't able to score the basketball. But you know what else he did? He got on the defensive side of the basketball. He got on the backboard. He started playmaking. He distributed a little bit more. Those are signs to me that says, I am going to be a complete basketball player. And in the process of him becoming a complete basketball player, that moves him up the list. I'm not as fast as Joel to say that we're talking about a top 5 player or something like that right now. I think in the next year or 2 years, I think he'll undisputably be the best 2 guard in the game. I think within the next 3 years tops,
Ooh,
we're
better
having
than
a serious
Booker,
conversation. I think in the next 3 years tops, we're having a serious conversation about him being a top 5 player. Very serious.
Better than Book.
Yes, I don't think it's going to be a question. And the reason why is because what we just talked about with Jaden McDaniels, I think Anthony Edwards is going to be an all-league defender too.
Okay.
I think so too. And that's why I love Anthony Edwards so much. It's the offensive upside, but defensively, he takes on those challenges. Now, I love competition. That's why I always try to compare Tatum and Edwards, because I want to have this little rivalry with Dehls. It was not too long ago where Riv and I were talking about Harden and Curry. That hasn't aged too well for me on my part. But because of my feelings with Harden, I had to scout and pick the right player to choose.
I respect
Pick
it.
the right player with the right mindset. And Anthony Edwards, who actually plays both sides of the floor. Because if Harden played both sides of the floor, oh yeah, this is a closer conversation. But you know he does.
And Ant-Man aren't close either, right?
Oh, they're not. But you got to pick a new young player because your player is
Young player is SGA.
It's crazy. What happened to
Edwards going
Luka?
better than SGA.
You know, it's funny. I was actually going to mention SGA's name. He's kind of taken some of the spotlight away from Anthony Edwards. And as great as Anthony Edwards was this past season, a lot of the hype is now being given to SGA because he was just first-team All-NBA. And deservedly so. Averaged over 30 points per game, put an OKC team that no one had expectations for prior to the season. He had
what happened in the
premier.
He lost.
They
So he
lost.
was supposed to be there.
To who?
He lost to Pels.
To Ant-Man.
What's that?
No,
It was
I
the
wasn't.
Pels.
no.
Oh, they got smoked out by the Pels.
That was a close game.
The Pelicans
Or did
beat
they beat
OKC.
the Pels?
No, Pelicans beat OKC,
And then the Pels
and then
lost
the Pels lost to Minnesota.
Right. Because Minnie lost to the Lakers first.
Yes.
Yes.
And Jalen wasn't there.
Yes. No, didn't Pels beat Minnie?
No, it was a play-in tournament. The Timberwolves beat OKC 120-95.
Right.
So
right,
OKC
right.
beat the Pelicans.
No, Pels played Minnie, right? No. Yeah, OKC beat the Pels. Right. They did. They did beat the Pels. They did. Yeah, CJ did some bullshit at the end of the game. I remember that now. He did some crazy shit. Yeah.
Why am I blanking on that so terrible?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna be better than SGA. I don't know SGA dog 30.
No, I respect
And
that. You know I'm an
and
SGA
Edwards.
fan.
You're not.
What?
And Edwards, and this is a bit of a throwback for you guys, but when I watch Ant Edwards, and I'm also on record saying this, he's a more athletic version. To me, when I watch him, he's a more athletic version of Mitch Richmond when I watch him.